Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Kevin Ayers, Senior Director of Product Marketing for our Rimini Protect portfolio at Rimini Street. We are here today to talk to you about how Rimini Protect can help you mitigate security risks with VMware. To help us explore this topic, I have Gabe D'Amelio with me. Gabe is the Global Vice President and General Manager for Rimini Protect. Thanks, Gabe, for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Always enjoyed the conversations, Kevin. So
to give us a bit of context, Broadcom has announced changes to their VMware portfolio. The first announcement is that they are simplifying their portfolio based on VMware and VSphere Foundation and VMware Cloud Foundation. Broadcom also announced, which is more important for this conversation, that support will move to a subscription-based model. On May 20th, Rimini Street also announced the availability of comprehensive support, security, and consulting services for VMware products. Gabe, I'd like to have a conversation with you about what the Rimini Protect part of our offering will look like. And let me start with the ultimate question. In your experience and opinion, is it possible to protect VMware products like vSphere, ESXI, and VCenter without being on VMware support?
Yeah, absolutely. So the interesting thing is, and we'll dive into this a little bit, but it all starts with the basics, right? Which is going to be good hardening, and then subsidizing your controls on top of that. But yeah, we can dive into those details as you like.
Excellent. So let's continue a little bit deeper. What is your take on organizations that don't leverage VMware support from Broadcom? How do they attempt to secure their environments?
Yeah, so again, starts with the basics, and whether you're on support or not, you need to do this. It starts with good security hygiene or hardening, ultimately. So as an example, there's absolutely no reason in the world you should be running vCenter out there on the public internet, right? It should not be accessible. Frankly, that infrastructure should be fully segmented, and you should be very seriously leveraging segmentation, even multi-factor authentication for the admins of the systems, anyone who's provisioning resources management. You should have all your policies and processes very tied down and I'll say mature, if you will. And really, when it comes down to it, there's a ton of guidance that's available out in the industry regarding just hardening and protecting VMware products and infrastructure. So whether it's going to be leveraging DISA STIGs, for example, which is the DoD standard for secure configuration, whether it's going to be leveraging CIS benchmarks, some combination of the STIGs and the benchmarks, even seeing what's going on in the OSINT community, which is open source intelligence community, to kind of understand what tools and methodologies are used to identify and find these gaps and weaknesses as they exist. Those are all things that are easily available for most organizations. They don't necessarily have the resources or skill sets sometimes to implement those things, and that is where we kind of start with our clients, for example, is really benchmarking against those capabilities. And then we just take it to 10 from there.
Gotcha. So obviously that is the first step, and that is the basics, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about what the next level is? Surely there's something beyond hardening and what that might look like.
Yeah, so hardening in its own right is really about reducing attack vector or the potential or probability that someone could attack and successfully infiltrate the infrastructure or resources within that infrastructure and laterally move. What you're really thinking about when you look at hardening, and also this is critical with the security controls that you're leveraging, and this is where we help our clients, is really about mapping those controls and how they're leveraged to ensure that they're optimally protecting, if you will, against the weaknesses that lead to those types of vulnerabilities that could be exploited within the platform.
So that brings up a very interesting point. You just mentioned weaknesses instead of vulnerabilities. Right. Can you dive into that a little bit more and what you mean by weaknesses?
Sure, absolutely. So everything has weaknesses, especially in this lovely world of all things software, hardware, firmware, infrastructure, you name it. Your car and your home have security weaknesses, right? Everything ultimately does. And the weaknesses ultimately, we think of it as categories of by which particular vulnerabilities would fit within. So whether it was, for example, a particular type of attack that is exploiting a cross-site scripting vulnerability, well, the weakness is that it's susceptible to cross-site scripting, and it may be in any number of places. So for us, it's about ensuring that we have security controls that are in place that can protect against those entire categories of the applicable weaknesses. And these, by the way, are tracked, and there's a tremendous amount of information available thanks to the work of the good folks at organizations like MITRE and SANS with the top 25, and OWASP, of course, with their top 10, which is application focused. But that is always a great reference point for understanding the things that are applicable to the software or resources that you're protecting, and then getting an idea from their mitigations and secure coding best practices, frankly, can give you hints on how to actually fix or protect those particular weaknesses.
Gotcha. So, question for you. Let's take that just a little bit further. There are lots of articles being published these days about zero-day and/or critical exploits, which fits right in with what you were just talking about. That indicates that there's a significant level of concern about that in the market. Can we help protect against zero-day and critical exploits as well?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a number of ways that we can do that. And by the way, a lot of the hardening, if you actually follow the hardening guidance, you're going to address a lot of those particular types of issues right out the gate. Where we've seen a lot of systems that were compromised historically, a lot of breaches that affected VMware products. Quite frankly, those were easy to hit targets because, again, they were publicly facing, sitting there on the open internet. Whereas with secure configuration and hardening, those types of things would have been avoided natively. That being said, there are, techniques and methodologies, controls that can be leveraged to address zero-day vulnerabilities. But there's something interesting about that particular point of the conversation here, which is that we're seeing also from Broadcom something that we haven't seen from most of the software vendors in general. I'm actually going to read something that's a direct quote from Broadcom specifically about these exploits or critical vulnerabilities. So Broadcom actually issued a blog post, and what they did was they stated Broadcom will provide all perpetual license customers, that's the key, you have to be a perpetual license holder, including those that have expired support contracts, with access to zero-day security patches. Okay. So they also go so far as to define what that is, right? They define a zero-day security patch or a patch or workaround for critical severity security alerts with a CVSS or common vulnerability scoring system. I would assume on the 3.x scoring system as greater than equal to 9.0. So anything kind of by definition, by the way that scoring system actually works, that is exploitable, they're going to issue patches for or fixes or at least workarounds, which is very common in VMware. There's traditionally been a lot of workarounds, if you will, for a lot of these types of issues. And the workaround basically means it's not a code-based fix, but it's another way to address the issue. A lot of times it's configuration changes. That is actually very in line, by the way, with a lot of our methodology when it comes to hardening. That's configuration changes, for example, or using these other types of controls. So very much falls in line with a lot of the things that we help our clients do proactively, which what we find in those particular circumstances is using our guidance, using our controls, our services, and even our solutions where applicable. Our solutions are proactively able to address a lot of these types of exploit scenarios because of the alignment of the methodology. But again, the consideration of mapping against the weaknesses themselves, not just the vulnerability.
Gotcha. Understood. So thinking about that, you previously mentioned that our services and solutions can help improve an organization's security posture. I think that our audience has a firm understanding here about threat intelligence and how that contributes to that, because you've been talking about that in the last couple of questions here. Can you talk to a few examples of how our solutions might help further their security and risk management initiatives?
Sure. Well, let me also back up a second in that threat intelligence feeds into a lot of the core services that we provide. Like for all of our clients, we provide what we call a security vulnerability analysis report. And that kind of is a very key or critical service that our clients leverage, whereby we then work with them. And they take the intel that comes out of that report, understanding the issues that face the products that we're supporting for them, and ensure that there are controls in place to protect those, like kind of on a continual basis, right? But where threat intelligence also is key is it feeds into our security solutions. So when we talk about our security solutions, if you look, for example, at an example of a VMware stack, um, if you think about how that stack is managed, well, we can actually provide services which are 24/7 managed services, which actually protect against really any of the content routes of traffic in between that infrastructure and any user or third-party partner systems and integration, right? So again, content routes, doesn't matter if it's APIs or web services, we can provide protection, and we can even segment the service off as a part of that protection. To go even further down and deep into the stack, kind of at the deepest point, if you will, all of the configuration for VMware products, so specifically vSphere, all of that configuration is going to happen within a backend database that vCenter is operating on. It is a database driven application. So all of the configuration for your hosts, network infrastructure, users, every bit of that exists within a database, and it can be the built-in vCenter Postgres database. You can upgrade, you can run MS SQL, for example. There's different options, but we have the ability to provide our advanced database security solution as a mechanism to not only proactively protect that database against database-specific attacks, which, by the way, are commonly how people actually break into applications or databases. They do it through the application, and then they're modifying data on the database, which would pertain particularly to permissions, for example. So we can actually see those attempts, and we can proactively block those attempts. But probably more interesting to more of our clients is we can actually write custom rules. And this is something that is industry exclusive to us, period. Nobody else has this capability. We can provide our clients with a proactive kind of auditing mechanism whereby we can create custom rules where we can see if somebody's attempting to change, for example, table permissions or data within a table or schema, for example. And we can either alert to that, or depending on how serious it is, we can, of course, block that behavior. And that is kind of yet another mechanism by which, depending on how risk averse an organization is and how critical it is to keep VMware and the corresponding infrastructure and services secure, we can go above and beyond what you typically see available in industry.
Makes sense. It is a fairly complex topic, so thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you explaining that to us. Perhaps we can go deeper in another session pretty soon for those that would like more information. And in closing, if anybody has questions about the content we've shared, or if you would like us to go deeper, please contact us. There's a number of ways to do that. You can reach out to your client success manager. You can find our contact information on the website, but we'd love to have a conversation with you. And every environment, I think this is really important to call out at the end here, every environment is different. You know, Gabe spent a lot of time talking about how to harden specific environments, but all of that depends on the configuration that you have. So we'd be happy to spend some time working with you to develop a solution for your particular needs. So thank you very much, Gabe. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.